Hey guys, my name's Andy Rushing. I'm from Nashville, Tennessee. I work full-time with Kari Jobe as her LD, and I'm out here on the Hillsong United tour running lights for Daigle, who's the opener. We are out on the May run and the July run of the Empires tour. I'm not actually from Nashville. I grew up in Athens, Georgia. Went to school right outside Cleveland, Tennessee, or right outside Chattanooga, Tennessee, in Cleveland, and went to Lee University. While I was there, I worked on the tech crew, which is how I got into lighting. We started developing a kind of a once-a-month concert on Sunday nights, and realized that lighting and video were a big part of that. So we kind of began designing rigs and working with local companies to rent gear. That's how I learned to do all this stuff. And before long, I got asked to go out on the road with a band who'd come through, and through that, decided to move to Nashville and start touring full-time. It's been about a year and a half since I've done an opening slot gig. So it's a different mindset, that's for sure. You know, you're not the headliner, you know, you don't have the perks of the headliner, so you've got to fit all of your stuff on a smaller amount of stage. You want to pack a punch, but you don't have a ton of room. But the biggest thing to think about is you are setting the tone for the night. So you are the first person that the crowd sees. They're obviously there to see the headliner. You want to leave a good taste, but at the same time, you want to make sure that you set up the night, especially in a worship atmosphere, that you set up the night right for the headliner. So it's a tough slot to be in, but it's fun. It makes you get creative again. We have two sticks of GT truss, which is made to carry fixtures in it, so you don't have to hang fixtures every day. You can roll the truss in with everything already wired, take it right out. So we decided to use that technology, or I guess, I don't know, structure, and create a set card out of it. So we mounted pipes to it, we mounted lights to those pipes, stuff in the truss, everything's cabled, so we can just roll it on and off stage, take it right into our trailer. We don't have to hang fixtures every day. So that filled in that gap in the middle of the stage nicely. So it was, you have to consider kind of all the elements in it, and we wanted to make sure that we could tie into what the tour was giving us and also have a nice punch on stage. So there's not really a lot of warm tones in the rig. You kind of have to make them out of the LED fixtures. So we brought some warm white LEDs. The rig that we're using from the tour is all profile-based fixtures. So we brought wash fixtures to try and, you know, have some contrast with what we brought and what the tour was offering. Our rig is mainly Chauvet and elation. We have 6 elation WW4s, which are the new 4-light blinder, LED blinder, and they're great. I highly recommend them. I think they're great for what they offer. And then we have a 24 of the Chauvet Rogue R1 washes, which are great for what they do. They're great in number, they're a cheap fixture, they zoom, which is important, and they're very bright for how small they are. Super lightweight, they don't draw any power. And then we have 8 of the Chauvet Nexus 7x7s, which are a really cool effect light if you can position it in the rig properly. So as far as fixture choice and manufacturer choice, we kind of planned this up. We knew what would be easier and more affordable for us. So we went with a Chauvet style fixture, elation style fixture, and it just ended up being that was what 4Wall was able to give us and kind of let us use on this front. When it comes down to fixtures, especially in church settings as well, you know, you're never going to have the budget you want. So you've got to figure out how to get the most for your money, and sometimes it might not be the biggest name brand fixture. But the great thing is a lot of companies are coming out with affordable options that still do the job great. And especially if you're If they're going in a church in more of an install setting and they're not going to take wear and tear from the road, then a cheaper fixture will last just as long as you need it to. And technology's getting better, so you do get more bang for your buck with something like a Jobe fixture over a Martin fixture or a Verilight or clay packy. When those are great, they're not always affordable, but there are great options out there that can do what you need it to. So like I said earlier, our floor package, 2 sticks of GT truss with pipes and fixtures mounted. So outside of that, the tours offered us kind of a skeleton of their rig. So they have 6 trusses hung stacked, 3 on either side. And in those there are 3 Jobe BMFLs a piece. So we actually have a total of 18 Jobe BMFLs, which are it's a big multifunction light is what it stands for. It's Jobe's kind of answer to the Viper, the Mac Viper, or the Verilight 4K beam wash. So you can zoom them down and iris them down to get a nice beam. They spread nice and wide with gobos in them to give you that nice profile look. So we have 18 of those. We have 10 of the VL 4K spots, which are pretty much Verilight took every single parameter that you could want in a fixture and they stuck it in the 4K spot. It has framing shutters, it has gobos, iris, color wheels, color mixing, like anything you could think of is in that fixture. So it's very multifaceted. And then I have 8 of the Solaris flares above the kabuki. So there's a white kabuki scrim that hangs in front of our rig and is lifted out for our set and then comes back in for set change. So above that I have the Solaris flares, and then I have 2 Solaris flares on the floor on either side to side light Lauren. She is a huge fan of side lighting, so I've kind of made that a point to work that in the rig and put that in programming. And then outside of that, the tour has a front truss right above the B stage that has Verilight 3515 fixtures, which are great for front light. They have framing shutters in them. They're bright, so they have a good long throw. And we don't have to deal with spot ops. Consistency is probably one of the biggest keys to a good show. And a great way to have consistency is to have the same front light from show to show. As far as control goes, the tour is using a Grand MA 2 full-size console at front of house, and they have a Grand MA 2 Lite side stage as the tech console. When we came out, we did not have a console with us, so midway through the day they bring the tech console at the front of house, so I run Lauren's set off of the Grand MA 2 Lite. Everything is networked together, so it all runs on an MANet network session. There are the Grand MA MPUs at front of house, so basically those expand the parameters so you can control the number of fixtures they have, and then everything else is run over, it's almost like a Pathport CleanNet network system that goes down to Dimmer Beach, and then that's where all the data is supplied from to the rig. So knowing that in advance, I worked with the tour LD, Jared, and he sent me the plot. I was able to plot the rig in MA3D and work on programming off-site. And then we got into rehearsals, which we did not have a lot of time for rehearsals. The Outcry tour ended with Kari Jobe, and I went straight into rehearsals for Lauren and only had a day to work on programming. So being able to previs this on a computer was key. So I was able to do that ahead of time, show up on site. We merged the show in, and since then me and Jared have been working together to make both of our shows run seamlessly. Lighting is tricky. I would say other than figuring out very detailed technical aspects of things, I would say lighting is one of the more difficult aspects to the live show, because if it's wrong, it's very wrong. And you know, with audio, you could still pass audio, but lighting, it's either there or it's not. So for me, it's tough. I always tell people you can teach someone the technical side of lighting, but the creative side of it's just something they've got to have already. You can train it, but it's tough to teach the creative side. For me, when I approach programming, I like to get a rehearsal session of the music that's going to be played, so I know how it's played live. Because a lot of times artists will do rearrangements or put two songs together or something different than the record version. And the last thing you want to do is program to the record and show up and it's arranged differently and nothing fits. So I like to get the version of how they're going to play it, and then I'll sit and I'll listen to it, and I will actually go through and for each, as I'm listening to the song, each time I think I would want to write a cue, I store an empty cue for that song. So I do that from top to bottom, and then I label those as I go, so that when I go back to actually program, I'm not having to listen to the music and then come up with what I want to do. I've already done a skeleton in the cue list, so I know when I go back and listen to the music, oh, I wanted to do a hit here, I wanted to make this the chorus, I wanted to do a pre-chorus here. So it helps you pre-plan your cue list so that you're not having to comprehend all that at once, because it can be overwhelming if you're sitting down with a blank slate. So that's kind of how I approach the organization side of things. As far as the design, you know, if it's a down moment, you want to make the lights. It's tough to describe. You know, if it's a down moment, you want to make the lights reflect that. If it's an up moment or a fast beat chorus or something, you want to make the lights reflect that. It's very important to add to what the music is doing, not try to lead the music or take away from the music. You want to supplement what the music is already doing. Worship enhancing is probably the most important part of lighting, especially in the worship aspect of things. You know, it's Sunday mornings, you have to be very careful, especially with a congregation that's mixed with people who are used to it and are new to the idea. You know, in a setting like this, you know, with the arena and the great rig, people are here for a concert, you can get away with a little bit more. But in a church setting, you have to be very careful about how you program. You don't want to distract from the moment, you want to add to the moment, and that's the most important part. If there's a build and it's an emotional build and it's a dramatic build, you can be dramatic with the lighting. If it's a slow, soft build, you don't want to be dramatic with the lighting because it's going to distract from the worship side of things. But if there's a very strong, dramatic build that goes into a big anthemic chorus, then be dramatic. Feel free to bring the lights down and have stuff flashing. And when the anthemic chorus hits, go to open colors, add blinders in, things that add to what the music is doing and not necessarily distracting people. Your goal is for people to not necessarily expect what's going to happen, but to not be surprised, especially on a Sunday morning. You don't want to surprise them with what's happening. You want them to feel comfortable with the atmosphere that you're creating around them. I am of the group that thinks the tech team is just as much a part of the worship team as the people on stage singing. If there is, if there are lighting fixtures to be used, if there is a PA to be used, then the people working that are just as much a part of the worship team as the drummer or the worship leader. And I think it's important to view yourself as that, when programming, because you're not, as soon as you detach yourself from the worship team, you lose focus of what you're there to do. It's important to view yourself as another worship leader as just as much as the drummer. If the drummer did not feel a part of the worship team and felt detached and was just up there, you know, to get through this and move on to the next thing, then the rhythm would be off. You know, everybody has to work together, and it's very important to keep that in mind, that, you know, not each part, when it can be viewed and enjoyed separately, when it comes to worship, to function properly, needs to work together. One thing that was kind of fundamental for me to grasp when I started out is that budgets should never limit you. There are ways to do everything with any type of budget. Obviously, the rig behind me with you know, the hundreds of thousands of pixels of video, you know, tons of moving fixtures, LED washes, top of the line consoles and networking. Of course, that's great, and there are tons of possibilities for programming and enhancing worship, but it can all be replicated on a smaller budget. You just have to be creative about it. So, you know, obviously in this setting, it is more of a concert than a Sunday morning worship service. However, that does not mean this isn't a worship service. So I think it's important to understand that as you watch this show. You know, if you're make it to any of the Empire's tour, I think it's important to understand that it's a concert, but it's still a worship experience. And you have to look at it from a creative standpoint. I love going to see shows because I get to see other LDs and how they work, and it allows me to enhance my creative side. You know, I can watch the show and say, oh wow, that's a great way to transition from a verse to a chorus, or man, that was a little distracting in that slow chorus, and it sharpens my creative tools to see other people program. And I think that's a great lens to watch this show through, is to say, how can I use not necessarily the exact, you know, programming style. Say they strobe in a bridge and do a big hit into a chorus. That might not fit for your atmosphere of worship, but you could still say, wow, what a dynamic style of programming. How can I be more dynamic on Sunday mornings? Or, man, that was unbelievable to just have the lights stay still for a chorus. How can I be more subtle on Sunday mornings? So I think to look at it from a global creative perspective is also good, because it's not, detail's important, but if it's messy, if it's cluttered, that's when it becomes distracting. So sometimes it's okay to sit and let something breathe, let the music do its thing for a little bit. So when watching this show, keep that in mind. Look for creative consistencies. Look for clean programming, and try and challenge yourself to think, how can I use more dynamic stuff, more subtle stuff, and try and better yourself as a programmer or a designer, but not get bogged down in, oh my gosh, there's so many cues, or there were so many hits. Quantity is not always quality. And I think that's another thing to think about when watching this show. Is there's a ton of fixtures, there's a ton of LED panels, but quantity is not always quality. If you have a low budget, that's okay. Have good quality. You don't have to have a ton of cheap fixtures. Have a couple good fixtures that look better. and put your money towards building a set, or shining light onto something instead of out into the crowd. You can potentially get more money, more bang for your buck that way. Touring is tough. It definitely takes a certain personality. It takes a certain work ethic. If this is something you're interested in getting in, don't give up on that. There's always a possibility. There are always local places to get involved. Take advantage of the people you work with as well. If there are people in your church that know more than you do, study under them. The worst thing you can do is not ask questions. I've been doing this for about 7 years and I still don't know everything. And I love asking questions. I love sitting down with someone. If you're at a concert, I promise you, don't do it in the middle of the show, but I promise you, if there's some downtime and you see the LD at front of house and you can make it up there, just politely go ask him, introduce yourself, say you're a lighting guy, and pick his brain for some stuff, Now, if he's busy, don't bother him, but feel free to go ask. They don't mind answering your questions. They love talking about the gear they have on the road, trust me. But always ask questions, always try and learn, seek out opportunities to learn. The worst thing you can do is to think there's nothing left for you to learn, because there's always stuff left to learn. And then just be a hard worker. Go volunteer. Volunteer for load-ins. If a show comes through your church, be the first one there to volunteer to help load it in and work with the crew there. That's the best way to learn, is working with people who are doing it on the road. Books are great, but books don't teach you everything. There's a lot to learn on site. So if you can get involved in those, there's no telling. There have been a number of people that I've worked with at churches that have been great, and I have recommended to a shop to say, hey, these would be great guys to come in and do shop work, or even take them out as a tech. So you never know what could happen, and you never know what impression you can make on someone. Work hard, never stop asking questions, don't be afraid to learn, and stick with it. There's still times that I'm like, man, things are slow, is this what I want to do? But if you stick with it, you never know what's going to happen next week. Thanks, guys.